Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom with the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, with an historic clean sweep of the polls, Mia Mottley has led the Barbados Labour Party to an unprecedented victory. She was sworn in as Barbados's 8th Prime Minister this afternoon around 12:25 during a ceremony at Government House. Peter Thorne was there.
It was shortly before 12:30 when 52-year-old attorney-at-law Queen's Counsel Mia Mottley took the oath of office at Government House as Barbados' first female Prime Minister.
I, Mia Mottley, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
This ceremony was presided over by Her Excellency Dame Sandra Mason.
And that in all things, I will be a true and faithful Prime Minister. So help me God.
Ms. Mottley was followed immediately after by her Attorney General Dale Marshall, who's taking up the post for the second time. He served in a similar capacity in former Prime Minister Owen Arthur's cabinet.
I, Dale Dermot Marshall, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
The swearing-in ceremony of Barbados' first female Prime Minister was witnessed by her father Elliot, mother Amor, brothers Stuart and Warren, and sister Elan. Other relatives, friends, and top BLP party officials, including Chairman George Payne and campaign manager Jerome Walcott, were also present. Ms. Mottley's father, Elliot, said becoming Prime Minister is a fulfillment of her childhood dream.
Mia did not have any entitlement to become Prime Minister. At a very young age, 4, she would read the newspaper, and the one thing she would say, look at this, you see, Mia Mottley, the first female Prime Minister at age 4. It's taken a long time.
48 years later,
yes.
You have seen it to be a reality.
Yes.
Following the swearing-in ceremony, Ms. Mottley told reporters her government would get down to work immediately. Peter Thorne, CBC News.
Thanks, Peter. And Prime Minister Mottley is looking to have the swearing-in ceremony for her new cabinet by Sunday afternoon.
I hope that I can address the nation very shortly tomorrow as to the structure of the cabinet, and we will be working towards a swearing-in on Sunday afternoon. Her Excellency has consented to the same, and that will allow us to start work on Monday morning as we've promised all along. This afternoon I go to take some briefings on the economy.
Ms. Mottley says she's also hoping to convene the first sitting of a new parliament in another 2 weeks.
We're working with the Clerk of Parliament here, but it will be soon. I think there's some logistical issues, I'm looking at him now, that we have to work out. I don't think that the Parliament of Barbados was ever built to accommodate 30 seats on one side. So that's the very real logistical issue that we have, and we have to determine how best we will set it out, recognizing that the clerk has already advised me those are some challenges. But without prejudice to that, we do have urgent business, and I'd like to get the ceremonial opening of Parliament out within the next 2 weeks.
And we'll have the full version of Prime Minister Mottley's remarks to reporters at Government House in a news extra at 8:30 tonight here on CBC TV 8. In the wee hours of this morning, when much of the counting had been done and it was clear the BLP would form the next administration, Ms. Mottley addressed supporters who gathered in Roebuck Street at the party's headquarters. Our Ryan Broom was there.
The Barbados Labour Party's Roebuck Street headquarters was a hive of activity throughout the night. There was some early frustration about the pace of the start of vote counting. But as result after result eventually started to come in, loud cheers erupted from supporters throughout the headquarters and in the street where large screens were erected, especially for results in the constituencies that were considered difficult to turn. By the end of the night, Barbados had signaled that it was ready to welcome its first female Prime Minister. Ms. Mottley says she is humbled by the victory, but reminded the people that the victory was theirs.
I want to thank you, the people in particular, the thousands who are here and the thousands who were with us throughout this entire campaign, because this victory is not mine. This victory is not the Labour Party's. This victory is the people of Barbados' victory.
Ms. Motley also thanked both those who were elected on her team along with those who lost their seats.
I want to commiserate with those who have lost their seats today. And I commiserate because that is who we are. And we thank them for their service irrespective of whatever else. The truth is that those who offered themselves and who were not successful are not only incumbents, but there were young people who took courage, like young Kimar who ran against me, and who many of you may have seen me hugging in the paper because I salute him for his courage and his commitment to citizenship in this country.
Meanwhile, some of the key major issues Ms. Motley says will be at the top of the agenda for the new administration include the South Coast sewage crisis, the shortage of trucks at the Sanitation Service Authority, and the shortage of Transport Board buses. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
And before Ms. Motley's address to supporters, outgoing Prime Minister Fendel Stewart had conceded defeat. Addressing the nation from DLP headquarters on George Street in the early hours of the morning, Mr. Stewart also accepted responsibility for the loss. The outgoing Prime Minister arrived at DLP headquarters just after 3 a.m. to a handful of supporters. He addressed the nation even before all of the seats had been declared, describing the DLP's defeat as overwhelming. One of Mr. Stewart's first tasks was to congratulate the Barbados Labour Party on what he described as its impressive victory.
I want to assure the party and, of course, the Prime Minister designate that they carry the very best wishes of the Democratic Labour Party and its membership into the future as they preside over the destiny of Barbadians for the next parliamentary term.
Going forward, Mr. Stewart says when the dust settles, the party will have to reflect on what happened and why, and take the corrective steps needed to rebuild it. On his part, the outgoing Prime Minister accepted responsibility for the defeat and said it would be his last election.
This was always going to be my final election, and I thoroughly enjoyed what I was able to do ever since entering electoral politics in 1994. Of course, I emphasize the word electoral only because I was in politics long before that, contributing to the building of the Democratic Labour Party.
Mr. Stewart says during its 10 years in office, the DLP registered some impressive advances, but also acknowledged that it had to make some very difficult decisions which may have played a part in the defeat at the polls. He also thanked the 29 DLP candidates who contested the election. The leader of Solutions Barbados, Grenville Phillips II, has congratulated Prime Minister Mia Motley and the Barbados Labour Party on their resounding victory at the polls. He says Solutions Barbados respects the will of the people, and despite the defeat, his party is looking forward to contesting the next general election.
Clearly, the public rejection of the Democratic Labour Party benefited the Barbados Labour Party. We all want what is best for Barbados. Therefore, we will continue to give the ruling party our best advice. Solutions Barbados was formed because a Prime Minister noted that unless you're in the political trenches, you have no standing to offer such advice. So we formed. With such a swing away from the ruling party, it is natural that the public will want to gravitate towards the alternative that they know best. We are less known, but we did our best with the resources that we had. We want to thank all of those who supported and encouraged us over the past 3 years.
Hotel Executive Colin Jordan is the new Barbados Labour Party Member of Parliament for St. Peter. The first-timer defeated Democratic Labour Party candidate Dave Cumberbatch and Lynn Royce Cantlebury from the Barbados Integrity Movement. Mr. Jordan secured 4,632 votes, more than 3 times the number polled by Mr. Cumberbatch, who got 911. Mr. Scantlebury received 139 votes. Now, Mr. Jordan extended his thanks to all those who supported him.
I am very, very thankful to my family first, and then to the people of St. Peter. They've reposed a lot of confidence in me. It is not just me, it's my team. It is also, a lot of it also comes from my parents and my late sister. So I ride on that, and I feel quite happy to have been elected by them to be their representative. And I pledge to serve them to the best of my ability.
The new St. Peter MP also believes Barbadians will not be apprehensive about the clean sweep, that is, by the Barbados Labour Party.
In our manifesto, we've rubbed shoulders with the people, we've had people's assemblies, we have engaged with the people. So we are saying to them, even if you don't have an opposition in Parliament, we are still going to communicate with you. All of Barbados knows, and I think all of the Caribbean knows, that Mia Motley is a communicator. She likes to talk, and she speaks to people, and that is going to continue, so that even though there is no official opposition in the House of Assembly, in the lower house, there is going to be continued engagement with the people of Barbados.
One of the big winners on the night was Santia Bradshaw, who was victorious in the St. Michael's Southeast constituency. She polled 3,803 votes to the DLP's Rodney Grant total of 1,095 votes. Solutions Barbados candidate Francia Bourne took 105 votes and the United Progressive Party's Veronica Price 26. Ms. Bradshaw says she is happy to have been given such a large mandate, which even eclipsed that of her father, Dilal Bradshaw, a former representative of the constituency.
I've beaten the results which the Barbados Labour Party would have had in previous occasions in this constituency. I also would have won for the first time the Pinelands area, overwhelming for the Barbados Labour Party, beating in particular my dad's record, which for me, this is a legacy that I've been trying to break. So I feel really, really good about that.
And hundreds of red shirts could be seen in the Bridgetown area in a manifestation of the Barbados Labour Party's comprehensive victory at the polls. Shane Jones was on the ground getting the pulse of the people.
Change has come to Barbados, and now thousands of Barbadians across the length and breadth of this country are eager and hopeful of what a new Barbados Labour Party administration can do for this country.
People are not going to sit down and allow you to, do anything and think that you deserve their vote. And I am proud of Bajans today. I'm proud that we have a female prime minister, and I think that this is an opportunity for the Democratic Labour Party and all other opposition parties to rebuild and do what is best for Barbados.
A better future and a job well done. The work now has to begin.
Oh yeah, expecting money to stir again. You understand me? Expecting Mia to make Barbados great again.
My hopes is that Mia do what she says she can do, and I know she's going to do what she says she can do, because she ain't met false promises to the people of Barbados. Look, the voter turnout come out. Most young people vote yesterday and from very early. So I know that she can produce.
I am a Christian, and we pray for the will of God to be done, and we really believe it's the will of God.
Barbadians made the decision yesterday, and today they have made their voices even more clear. They are happy about what happened, and now there is a genuine feeling of expectancy. Shane Jones, CBC News.
Thanks, Shane. And coming up after the break, the Electoral and Boundaries Commission explains why the late counting of ballots in yesterday's general election. Stay tuned. The Electoral and Boundaries Commission has given a reason for the late counting of ballots in yesterday's general election. Counting was scheduled to start at 8, but 2.5 hours later, not a single ballot had been counted at most centres last night. Well, in a release issued through the Government Information Service, the EBC pointed out that the Chief Electoral Officer, Angela Taylor, was mandated by a court order late yesterday afternoon to add 18 people to the register of electors. The release said preparing the addendum to facilitate this process and distribute the registers to the various polling stations in several constituencies caused a delay in the close of the poll in the affected constituencies. The vehicles and drivers recruited for the delivery of the boxes containing the ballots from the early poll held last Thursday then had to be redirected to deliver the addendum, resulting in an even further delay in the delivery of those boxes. The Electoral and Boundaries Commission has assured the public that all necessary procedures were followed to protect the integrity of the poll. The Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations of Barbados is congratulating the BLP on its historic victory in the 2018 general election. In a press release, General Secretary Dennis DePisa also welcomed Mia Mottley to the office of Prime Minister.
She is to be congratulated on the achievement of becoming the first female Prime Minister of the island, and moreover as the first woman to be elected as head of government in the history of the colonial and independent Barbados. The Congress extends its congratulations to all members of the Barbados Labour Party who were elected to office as members of Parliament. The resounding victory of winning all 30 of the seats contested is an expression of the will and the confidence which the people have reposed in the newly elected government.
Situ Saab has also committed to working alongside the new government as it prepares to take up office.
The Congress commits to working with the new administration under the umbrella of the social partnership in forging an agenda which is directed at the recovery, development and growth of the economy and safeguarding the interests and welfare of Barbados and its workforce. Commiserations are in order for the outgoing Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Francis Stewart, and the members of the Democratic Labour Party who contested the polls. SUSAB takes this opportunity to commend the people of Barbados on their exemplary pre- and post-election conduct. This sends a message to the world that Barbados prides itself on exhibiting decorum, order and respect for the democratic process and the rule of law.
The offices of the Supreme Court complex are to be relocated temporarily. That's the latest news on the facility, which was closed last month due to environmental concerns. Some sections of the Supreme Court complex were closed last month after workers said environmental conditions there had become so bad they could no longer function. After what appeared to be some uncertainty, it has now been announced that some offices at the complex will be relocated to Manor Lodge, Green Hill, St. Michael from Monday, June 18th for about 4 months. That's according to a release from the Government Information Service, which says the move will allow for a general cleaning of the White Park Road building. Well, this has been confirmed by Registrar of the Supreme Court, Barbara Cook-Allen. She, along with several other representatives of the court, the National Union of Public Workers and the Bar Association, visited the Manor Lodge site on Wednesday. In the meantime, the Records Department will remain open until Wednesday, June 6th, during which time people can register babies as well as apply for death and marriage certificates. However, only urgent applications will be accepted by the Court of Appeal and High Courts for filing. And the planned move has the blessing of the presidents of the Bar Association and NUPW, who both say the new accommodations are more than satisfactory for the workers and will allow the business of the court to be conducted. A 48-year-old man has been remanded to prison after being slapped with a slew of burglary charges. David O'Brien Best of No Fixed Place of Abode is accused of 62 burglaries, 2 counts of theft from homes and 3 counts of aggravated burglary, all allegedly committed between September 2017 and this year. He appeared before Magistrate Eddie Watts in the Oistins Magistrates Court earlier today, but only 10 of the charges were read. Best was not required to plead to the indictable charges and was remanded to prison until Monday, when the other charges will be read. Still to come now, a look at some of the stories making headlines across the region. In St. Lucia, the cannabis movement is calling on Prime Minister Alan Chasney to make his position on the legalization of marijuana public.
Members of the movement have long called on successive administrations to be flexible and amend the cannabis laws and policies to take into account cultural and religious practices, medical values, and human rights. Spokesman Andrew DeCarey says the Prime Minister needs to make a statement urgently ahead of 2 expected developments on the marijuana scene.
In light of the fact that the annual CARICOM Head Summit is rapidly approaching in July of this year, where the CARICOM Cannabis Commission will be presenting their recommendations, as well as the fact that Canada itself will also be legalizing federally in July as well, plus the statements made by both Prime Minister Gaston Brown and by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of their intent to reform cannabis laws. We at the cannabis movement and the whole Rastafarian community are asking the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Alan Shasney, to make a public statement regarding this administration's intentions regarding the cannabis law reform.
DeCarey says the movement is concerned about what he describes as mixed signals from the Alan Shasney administration.
The reasons are, 1, the original members of the local cannabis commission created by Mr. Hermangale Francis and presented to the cabinet in January 2017 were rejected by members of his own cabinet, even though the members of the original commission were all experts in the field. 2, no budgetary allocations were put in place in order for the new commission created in March of 2017 to do the work that they were meant to do. As a result, minimal work was done by the commission for the whole year.
A Hindu school's decision to prevent a Muslim trainee teacher from wearing her hijab is headed to the courts. The Education Ministry is now awaiting a report regarding the issue, and once that is received, the Attorney General will take the matter to High Court for interpretation. The government says this issue is not a straightforward one, and therefore it will wait for the court's determination. Akash Samaru has more.
For the Education Ministry, there's no clear-cut solution or decision. The ministry says Section 4 of the Constitution upholds a citizen's right to religious expression.
We feel it is an abrogation of the rights of an individual, the rights of this student, this lady, this teacher.
While the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha is pointing to the Concordat of 1960, which says that a denominational school can object to a teacher on religious grounds. The Education Ministry received a report from the school and is now awaiting a report from the SDMS. When that is received, the Attorney General will take the matter to the court.
This requires interpretation of the Constitution, which is the supreme law of Trinidad and Tobago. So that is why you go to the court for an interpretation, because you recognize that there may be very complex issues that only a court could adjudicate on. That's why we're going for an interpretation rather than declaring a position.
Now, the government says that this court interpretation will be necessary only if Nafisa Naked decides to take the matter further. The Education Minister is also once again challenging the argument that a denominational school has autonomy to run its institution as the respective religious board sees fit. Minister Garcia says if you're accepting state funds, you abide by state laws, meaning that this institution is a public school. It will not be a new issue for the court to determine. Cases have been cited where religious freedom was challenged. Mr. Imbit said there's an example of Islamic religious wear being challenged by the court itself.
The issue was a juror who had come to court to sit on a panel wearing a burqa, which is more than a hijab. The judge, this is Justice Charles, did at the end of the day determine that the juror could continue to sit on the jury wearing the burqa.
The Education Minister said this is not an attack on the Concordat.
And that story, of course, was from Trinidad. Now, the restoration and preservation of historical buildings can boost tourism in Guyana. Kristen Macklingham reports.
When tourists visit Guyana, they are often awestruck and cowed with the beauty of historical buildings and the stories behind them. Most, if not all, of the content in the Comprehensive and Sustainable Conservation Management Plan for City Hall project could be used to boost the tourism industry in Guyana. That's according to Director of Culture, Tamika Botswin.
This project also comes at an opportune time when the government is invested heavily in developing Guyana's tourism potential, and buildings like City Hall are likely to attract lovers of wooden heritage to Georgetown. The Georgetown City Hall is one of the more unique colonial heritage buildings in Guyana, and is an integral part of the identity of Georgetown. The intricate architectural details on the building sets it apart from city halls the world over, and its beauty is often remarked upon by visitors to this country.
Ms. Botswin stated that the country's heritage is an important part of who Guyanese are as a people and tells the story of ancestors. Incidentally, most of Guyana's historic structures and buildings are made of wood and can be easily destroyed.
Further, a significant number of Guyana's heritage structures, like City Hall, are made of wood. These wooden buildings deteriorate over time and are vulnerable to moisture damage and to fires. Guyana has lost many beautiful buildings because of the absence of a proper management plan. The New Amsterdam Hospital and the original Sacred Heart Church are examples of heritage lost as a direct result of the absence of good management plans.
The Director of Culture added that it is very important and necessary for the development of plans for heritage buildings, especially since trained personnel in restoration and conservation of wooden heritage are few in Guyana.
We'll have a peek into the world of sports in just a moment, but before we get to that, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Ask the person who is deaf or hearing impaired how he or she prefers to communicate. Writing notes, lip reading, or need for an interpreter. This tip is brought to you in association with the Barbados Council for the Disabled.